All right, we are live on YouTube. Hitting the button on the back end of Rockfin, the uncensored free speech platform over there. You know, shout out to Rockfin. You guys have never ever complained to me about anything that I've said. I have never felt pressured to. I've never even been told about any sort of community guidelines. They're just like, hey, come over here, build a platform with us. We pay you. And so that is cool. Shout out to Rockfin. Shout out to the bigots on YouTube. We are live with one of my favorite dudes on the internet, made by JimBob.
Hello,
Mr. JimBob.
bigots.
What's going on, my man?
How's it going,
It's been a long time coming, dude. I've appreciated your work for a long time fan, long time listener, first time caller. Yeah, bro, we got made by JimBob over here. Now you are not made by JimBob anymore on Instagram.
Yeah, they took my Instagram account and then they took the last 3 down, and so now I just took the E away from the made, and now it's just mad by JimBob. I'm gonna see how many different variations I can go. But yeah, it's good to be back on here. I actually think that it's a result of poking at the swarm of vegans that I do quarterly, maybe yearly. It is a risk. They get a little crazy.
Well, I mean, your first made by JimBob account, which was legendary, like that Instagram, and I'm especially bummed because we had that Elmo skit that was on there, and that was like one of my favorite things. Like I loved that. That was and the bigots are always begging me to do Elmo stuff. Mm-hmm. We haven't even done any Elmo in a long time. Right. But yeah, that was my crown achievement, was voicing Elmo on Made by JimBob's Elmo skit. That was legit, and that's gone, man.
I'll post it tomorrow.
Sweet. I was hoping you still had that. That was good work.
Yeah, we were ahead of the curve too. I mean, Sesame Street was already perverse, but they were starting to be gentle about it, and then it just went full crazy. And so,
bro, Pee Pee and the Poo Poo Elmo is like for real now. Mm-hmm. I mean, we got take the. Well, we're on YouTube, so we can't go too far. But yeah, once we get over there on Rockfin, which guys later on, probably about 20-30 minutes from now, we're going to transition over to Rockfin for uncensored second half. You'll be able to watch that for free. Just go over there to Rockfin. It's free to make an account, free to follow the channel. And we're going to be talking uncensored, going deep on all this stuff over there. But yeah, now Elmo is promoting all the big agenda stuff.
Oh yeah, Elmo already has a sagging left face.
Bell's palsy Elmo's
yeah, totally.
is the hottest toy. Yeah, dude. Well, that was a shame when you lost that account, and I noticed that it happened right around the time when you were kind of poking at some of these vegan accounts over there on Instagram. It seems like they mass flagged you.
It's hard for me to learn a lesson because it is a worldview that I want, I look at these things and I go, okay, I need to attack. It's part of my job doing satire and all that is to attack poor arguments, poor positions, things that are tainted or buttressed by large corporate interests and stuff like that. And veganism is just one of those things. The reaction is worse than telling people we didn't land on the moon. I mean, it's way worse. It's one of the worst sacred cows that I've ever poked at. And it really stirs up people. And I think there might be some actual chemistry that's related to
these people are legit mentally ill. Like once you start to interact with this world, and most people don't have as much experience with dealing with the vegans as unfortunately I do. Mm-hmm. Right now, I've been a few years of really hard attacking this the fortress of veganism, and as you call it, the sacred cow, which is a really apt term because these people legit worship animals.
Yeah, and they're bloodthirsty.
yeah, they're starving. They're bloodthirsty, starving, and they're hangry. They're literally hangry people. I mean, one of the side effects of low cholesterol. Look at you guys if you're curious on the side effects of veganism. Go look at the labels and inserts for statins. All the side effects of statins: muscle wasting, irritability, depression, fertility issues, bone mineral density decreasing, suicidal ideation, all of this is also side effects of low cholesterol, which is veganism brings that about naturally. So it's a crazy world, and they're freaking vicious, man. It's a shame that you didn't get to debate. What's his
Yeah,
James
James
Aspie?
Asprey.
James Aspie.
Yeah,
He's really
yeah.
chill. He's just a chill vegan. He's like super. He's like the good-looking vegan. He's just super chill. He's from Australia. He like surfs and rips bong, and he's just like, just I'll do bong loads for the animals, bro. It'd be so chill if we could just like chill for the animals and like stop the animal holocaust or whatever.
He's definitely getting deep faked. And I'm using you as the voice for sure. Yeah, I was about to go on and debate him. Then you realize how broken. I mean, I watched you and Jay debate the vegan gains guy, and you realize that it's almost dumb for us because we assume we'll at least start with we agree on basic logic, like using like basic logic at the bare minimum, and it just goes so south so fast, and that was kind of a blessing, even though it resulted in my account being suspended. It was kind of a good a flare shot up into the air to go, oh, okay, you can approach these things and you can attack, but you got to measure how much it's worth dealing with crazy people. Because again, there's a dude who's a follower of that dude who posted my address and comments, threatened me, and now that I'm back, I just blocked him today, and he made a threat that I had to screenshot. And he's like, I know where you live. You know, if you're gonna threaten or if you're gonna mock vegans, you're gonna pay the price, like this kind of stuff. So it's like a part of me wants, like, you know, the carnal part of me wants vengeance and be able to be like, show them who's boss. But a part of me is like, protect my girls, protect my family, and just don't interact when you really think you're dealing with a crazy person. That's kind of my new rule. It gives me sanity too to do it that way.
I mean, that's a wild one, man. I've had people say a lot of really messed up things. I'm kind of liberal with my block button, you know. I mean, I don't hold back on my block button, so
yeah.
I hopefully never gets to that point with me. But I've had some of these dudes, like I've got some vegans that I interacted with that still make videos about me and still like try and tag me on stuff. Like, dude, it's been like a year and a half. The narcissistic wound should have healed by now. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes they have problems letting go, it seems. I mean, you've done some great kind of making fun of the vegan cartoons and your memes. I mean, the style, the memography that you've developed, the aesthetic of it, it's really become iconic over the last few years. Like it's something that's become ubiquitous, man. Like I sent you some screenshots of people are translating these in all different languages.
Right.
We're sharing Spanish versions of your memes.
Totally.
In like Ecuadorian groups that I see on Telegram and stuff. It's amazing, man. How did this come about? Like, were you always into art, or?
I was always into art and making stuff. You know, I knew I would do some form of art, but it took a long time for me to have anything to say. And of course, if you're going to be a memer or a cartoonist or anything, you want to be clear on what the positions are and what you're trying to say and what kind of stuff you're trying to reveal as far as absurdity is concerned. So going into LA, I moved there. I grew up in the Catskill Mountains of New York. Went out to LA with my friend at 22. To do the thing. Someone's gonna recognize me. They're gonna see how great I am, and they're gonna make it happen. This kind of stuff. And I worked in TV and stuff a little bit. But I was always drawing. I was always doing something with my art form. And it wasn't like crappy doodling. It was like, realistic drawing or painting and things like this. But I never had anything to say. It was so frustrating to be someone who knew they were creative, but you don't have anything to say. You draw a skull. Like, what do you do? What do you say? And so over time, the moment I started saying something, was I was in LA and I realized that something, because I had voted for Obama, and I realized, oh, he's dropping a bunch of bombs. And so one of my early memes was it was Obama doing his iconic mic drop, but all I did is swap the mic with a bomb. And I saw the reaction from my peers and my community in LA. And it was like, you're making him look bad. You're going to be the reason Trump wins, all this stuff. And I was like, whoa, like pointing to a single nugget of truth without actually saying some sort of like diatribe of what I think should happen, right? I just drop a little nugget that's true. And I saw that response and I said, whoa, I have something. And I don't know what it is, but it has something to do with simplifying some form of truth or some nugget of truth in a digestible way. And that's going to basically penetrate the zeitgeist in a way. It's shareable. It's easy to interact with. And so I knew I had a format that suited my my voice, but I still had to develop what I was saying. And so that single moment led me into all these other things and pursuing philosophy, you know, and finding people like Jay and yourself and only getting better through learning logic and philosophy at doing what I do. I mean, take a novice logician and a philosopher. I'm at core novice level, and it's perfect for what I do. You know, if it gets too heady, it won't be that good. If it, you know, in other words, I have to stay reasonably dumb. You know.
Man, I mean, you really have tapped in like the aesthetic, you mentioned kind of just tapping into the zeitgeist. I think that's a very apt term for what you do here. I've got some of your work. I'm just kind of cycling through and pulling up here. Forgive me, guys, for my poor emceeing skills over here on StreamYard. I'm still learning this program. But there's a very simple imagery. Do you do this on a? You must use like a device to do this.
I work on Procreate. It's like a little. It's on the iPad with a little digital pen.
Yeah, man. And you also do like you do commissioned pieces by hand as well, don't you?
Yeah, people ask me to paint the memes, and I've painted these on like 2 foot by 2 foot canvases and stuff. So all the like iconic epic ones that have been viral, I've painted a bunch of those. Some people ask for custom stuff, so it's actually a joy to get back into the physical work. Actually, like it's funny that I went full digital. And I've been able to come back to physically sitting in my home and painting. I love it. I love doing that.
Yeah, that must feel nice because doing so much work on a computer, it kind of zonks you, I mean, and dealing with. Well, I mean, being on social media so much. I mean, I can imagine it was kind of stressful losing that Instagram account because you built that for years. I mean, I followed you there for a couple of years.
Yeah, I knew it was coming too. Being around other people who get banned a lot, I'm like, okay, if I keep pursuing these targets, this is likely to happen. And so I was disappointed, but at the same time, I was like, oh, these are appropriate relief points for me to be like, if I get too wide or too big, if I have too much of a following, I could go in all sorts of directions and give too much attention because I really am interactive with the people, whether they hate me or not. I'm always there in the comments and stuff. And so I'm still learning whether that's even appropriate or something I should do or I shouldn't do, because like an artist, a memer, a cartoonist or whatever, it's best that the work says it. But there's something about being in the argument that I'm sort of drawn to as well. So, but at a large following, it gets exhausting. And I even thought about this. I'd be exhausted, and clearly we're interacting with lights, whatever's coming off the phone. But I realized something is that if you're in a combative sort of situation, which my account really is all the time, I realized that looking down and typing with my thumbs ferociously, that you actually have the emotions that you would normally have. So your eyebrows and your cheek muscles and the things that tense up in your face, they still occur even though you're not in the physical world dealing with someone physical. And I
Oh, for
realized
sure,
that
for
a lot
sure.
of that actually had an impact on me, and like headaches, just tensity in my head and my face in general. And I realized looking back, because I don't see myself, but if I were to look back and see myself constantly typing and responding to people and trying to, humiliate them and all this stuff, my face would actually be going through a lot of like muscle, like emotive muscle stuff. And that'll
Yeah.
tire your face, not just internally, your spirit, but it'll actually tire you physically. And so I've kind
Mhm.
of learned that lesson in the last year or two of just being like, okay, set a limit, do a couple jabs, do a right hook, you know, show the audience that, you know, what you're capable of as far as retorts, and then, be done with it.
Yeah, and it can be a trap too, because it's like a lot of the audience that sometimes there's a part of the audience that they just want to harvest your energy. Like they're
Right.
kind of certain, you get people like this in real life where they're kind of just vampiric
Mm-hmm.
kind of, they want to drain your energy. They want to argue about this and that. And like really they'll take arbitrary positions that they don't even care
They
about
don't
just
care.
to, yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing that most of us who are, trust people, we want to see the good in people. And so we start with trust. And so I've learned a lesson of like this assumption, it's naive, is that everybody is really arguing their position honestly, and they really care about their position, because I do. And so I assume other people do, and that's actually false. People don't
Yeah.
actually really care about their positions. They're actually surprised that you do, and almost like, stop caring about your position so much. Like, can't you just
Oh, bro, that's so
game?
cringe. You care about stuff?
Yeah,
Caring about
exactly.
stuff is so cringe and gay,
I
dude.
know.
Why do you care?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pathetic, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in some debates like that. I mean, one recently with a Destiny where it was just like it became completely obvious that this person, and even admitted it. Like you're literally just arguing in bad faith.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a position at all. You don't even have any beliefs. You don't even believe that you can speak anything that's true.
Right.
You don't even believe that there's truth, and this is all just a big game. So I
It
mean,
is.
it's I had a conversation with I don't know if this was public or it was private with Jay Dyer, and he was
Mm-hmm.
just like, yeah, it's kind of he was saying he thinks that we're kind of reaching this point in our culture where it's like a post debate society.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this isn't like it's some new idea. I mean, I think a lot of people have realized this you can't really have debate with most people anymore. Most people
No.
are so dumbed down. Not that I'm like super small, I'm so good, like intelligent, good at
Mm-hmm.
debate, I'm like a boss. But no, most people really, they're so nihilistic, and they'll just arbitrarily take a position just to try and dunk on people, and all they care about is the dunking on and the, oh, I got him to say something cringe, or oh, you got mad, lol, you mad, bro, I win. It's like
Yeah.
this. They don't care.
No.
It's just pure, what, I don't know, it's just pure faggotry at a certain
Right.
point. Sorry,
Oh,
YouTube.
YouTube. Sorry. Yeah. No. It is like that. It's almost like we think that we're players. Like when I'm debating, I'm like, again, it's not a glorification of like I'm a warrior and I'm good at this and that. It's just that I'm in a game that I feel is important. So I'm a player on the field, in life, in theology, or whatever we're pursuing here, and I'm talking to people who are actually just in the stands most of the time, and they don't care. They're throwing, like you said, they're just throwing popcorn and feces into the stadium. And here I am with a jersey. I'm like, wait, why don't you like take this seriously? But the joke's on me, because being a player and walking into the stands, the high rise seats, and expecting some other result from someone who just doesn't care. They're just a drunken guy who walked in the stadium and is just like just throwing stuff and slurring things, and they're like, I can't believe you're taking me this serious. Like they're almost like
Mm.
embarrassed, because it's vulnerable. Like they're embarrassed. People get embarrassed if they have to hold their position and say what they believe, and say it coherently. And that seems to be something in line with that conclusion, is that post debate is really like the debate part is like almost secondary to post an era of not having or not even feeling the need to have a coherent worldview, like even the need to have it, like, or the want. You know what I mean? Like you're like,
well, the coherent, that's cringe, bro. Like,
yeah,
who
you're
cares?
like, what is that? What does that mean? Oh, you know, like
coherent. That's like too many syllables, man.
Yeah, and that's the fault. You know, like you push people, and then the moment you expect, once they give you a reason to believe or to know that they just don't care about their own position, and you just got to get out of there. I mean, I'm talking to myself here. It's like, you know, I got James Asprey to say truth, you know, morality is relative and so is truth. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, they'll say that. The vegans, they'll say that right off. Like, if you just start out with that, like, they'll make these moral claims. Hey, is morality subjective or objective? Oh, well, it's subjective. And then they're like, but why would you enslave and murder animals? And you're like, well, I thought it's just subjective. How do you determine what's right or wrong? They're like, well, the general culture does. And we're like, well, 95% of people eat animal food, so therefore the general culture is right in your worldview. And they're like, well, if you could just convince everyone not to, then we win. And it's like,
no, it's so
dumb.
It is so dumb. They don't even know when they lose because you're just staring at them. Like, remember that debate you guys had with the vegan games guy? They couldn't tell you why we ought to pursue truth. Like, you know, that was the bait. It got down to, why should we use logic? Like, why should we?
Yeah.
But this is what's interesting about the debate against nihilists, and I've learned this from watching Jay, is that a person in our position who actually does know there's absolute truth, does know a creator, does know morality in our hearts, we will actually sound like the nihilist when we're pulling the opponent into the end of their logical conclusion. And so when we say, why is murder wrong? They go, oh, you think murder's right? You know, like, no.
Right? They'll try to project I know what you're saying. They'll do this. It's like, you ask, hey, do you believe that morality is objective or subjective? And they'll say, oh, morality is just subjective. It's something you make up. And then they assume you believe that.
Mm-hmm.
But you're like, no, you've just made claims that completely contradict your stated position that we have an objective moral obligation to not eat animals or to, you know, become vegan. But then you just said that there is no objective morality. They can't get it in their head. You have to literally walk them around 10 or 20 times to realize this. And then it seems like it can take weeks, months, maybe years for people to realize that. And when you read like Nietzsche, like, this is what he was struggling with. He said, you know, God is dead, morality, it doesn't exist, and there is no thing in and of itself. There is no truth. And his whole life was trying to grapple with this. And his philosophy was about, you know, what he was kind of like active nihilism, whereas basically God is dead. We need to create new gods. We're going to create the Superman. And the Superman is going to be, you know, the Ubermensch will be the new gods. We're going to create our own truth. Right. And it's, you know, basically this might makes right thing.
These are all versions too. Like I was talking to someone how veganism, it's nothing peculiar about veganism. It's just, if you reduce it down to its starting assumptions, it's just another version of a philosophy that worships the world or assumes we're oneness with all, or that utopianism is possible, or we're supposed to heal the earth and these kinds of things, because it ends up being utilitarian in the end, because you just make up an arbitrary measure of what the good is, like Sam Harris would suggest. You just base it in animals, your interaction with animals, as opposed to with people, and then it's the same thing. It's just it's the same shit, like with different characters that they pull in. But it's you're so right. It's like the moment they argue like, well, it's unnecessary. You're like, unnecessary harm. You're like, define harm, define unnecessary. You pull them down to understanding that necessity is given by arbitrary goals. And why would we assume that your goal is right? And then they go, yeah, but, and I go, you can't tell me what morality is without using the word unnecessary. And then it's over. They can't deal with it, because then they go, well, the only, the closest we can get to objective necessity is to exist. And I go, when I made a meme of this, Why is it necessary to exist? If a vegan says don't kill, it's unnecessary. Unnecessary for what? To live. Okay, so the vegan out in the woods who's starving and knows he needs the porcupine fat in that moment and sees little porcupine coming, why is it necessary for the vegan to live in that scenario and not just die and wither out and be food for the planet?
Yeah. In their worldview, there's no reason.
No.
Yeah. Well, and then I love the meme that you've made, because this is every vegan debate gets to a point where, let's see, I wish, I don't know if you have a link to this one on hand, but this is one of my favorite ones that you've done, because I've had this same conversation with vegans like 20 times the last 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. It's vegans will start out by saying you shouldn't eat animals because animals are just like us.
Yeah.
Right. And then you ask the vegan, well, if we're just like animals, we can't eat animals because animals are just like us. Is it okay if animals eat animals?
Right.
They'll be like, well, yeah. I don't care about that.
I'll actually find it. It's I actually drew that was a Cosmic Skeptic, that guy, because he makes this argument. And so I actually just draw you right into the meme then, if you're gonna. That's what I've been doing, is I just kind of draw these people into the comics. Yeah. So the starting point is this might be too bright. Yeah, I'm blown out. Anyway, humans are just animals. We're just animals, but we have moral agency, and they don't. Humans shouldn't eat animals, and then the guy says animals eat animals, and then the guy goes, yes, but humans, and then he thinks up his first statement, which is humans are just animals. So it's like,
yeah. See, and I love the way the visual, the way it progresses. If you have a link to that, if you could drop it in here in the stream, and I could pull it up on the screen, or if you give it to me in DM on Instagram, I could.
Oh yeah, I'll do that. Here. I'll do I'll just give you the full 4-panel of it.
Cool.
In one.
Yeah, that shot. One is, I love that one, because I've had that conversation so many times, and that's where it goes. Oh, humans are just animals. We shouldn't eat animals. And then you'll say, well, animals eat animals. And they go, well, we shouldn't base our morality on what animals do.
Yeah. Or I had a guy and I posted the audio, because he would send me these like obsessive audio files through my direct message. And he's like chewing, and he's like, imagine you're a cow and you're sitting there with your friends and you're on a line about to die with your friend. And so I'm like, okay, so your best argument of why animals and humans are the same and should be treated the same is requiring me to pretend I'm a cow with friends and I'm about to die. And then he goes, and as a cow, who would sound more reasonable to you? Me, who wants to save you, or the other guy who wants to eat you? And I go, a cow doesn't reason like a human. That's why we're different. Or they always say like, name one. This is their go-to. I don't know who invented this.
Name the trait.
Name the trait. And I'm like, you're literally embodying that very trait. Animals don't sit around naming the trait that distinguishes animals from humans in order to support a moral philosophical view. I mean, that is
the name the trait trick. The name the trait trick. It only works on people who are materialists.
Right.
People who will assume their worldview. Now, they'll get really upset because if name the trait, we say, oh, man, it's easy. Man is made in the image and likeness of God.
Right.
And then they'll say, prove God.
Right.
And then you're like, well, what will you accept for proof? And they'll tell you, they'll give you this narrow definition of what they'll accept as proof that is unprovable, and they'll make it impossible to prove. Therefore,
that's great. That's great. Like, this is a great extra step to that. So when they come back and say, prove God, and then when they say what's acceptable proof, you ask them whether they have that same standard of evidence for truth. And so any argument against the existence of God can be used against the existence of truth. And so when a materialist goes, there's no evidence of every single one everyone they say against the existence of God, you go, why would you have faith in truth? Present me the material evidence for this absolute concept, and they can't. And so,
well, what is truth? How do you know what is true? What's the measure of truth? Right. And then most people, their measure of truth ends up being their feelings, right?
Right.
Oh, well, I feel that it's bad to do this, therefore it's bad. Whereas, like, I mean, yeah, we might feel guilty, but we might know in our heart that it's bad to murder. We might know in our heart that it's bad to rape, pillage, steal, deceive people, lie and cheat, right? But in the worldview that we're coming from the Christian perspective, where we have a transcendental God that is the creator of everything, and that upholds all of reality. I mean, especially, the Trinitarian God, from the Orthodox perspective, where you have the essence and energy distinction, which is very important. Like, the divine energies of God are what we experience, and we experience truth, and we have access to truth through the divine energies of God, and God's essence being separate and completely unknowable. We cannot know God's essence because it's completely different from everything that is created. We can justify truth. We can justify good, bad, right, or wrong, and they can't. Right. And once they get to that point of realizing that, it becomes, usually with the vegans, it ends up they're hangry. They're very hangry.
Yeah, they nibble like this weird fake fruit roll up, thing.
Yeah, they'll get mad. At that point, usually they get really angry, and it becomes unproductive.
Well, they always use this very emotive stuff. It's always like, and then they slit the throat, and you're like, okay, you really love that fetish stuff. So let's say we develop a really calm pill where the cow actually has the experience of being on a roller coaster with his family members, that you would call his family members, and he's floating, and there's cotton candy that's grass flavored. And you're like, take away all the suffering. Can I still eat the cow? And they're like, and then they have to change the standard, because the moment you remove suffering, or in their standard, what's suffering, if you remove it, it must be okay then to eat the cow. If you remove the pain part, or make them these lobotomize meat patty things. And so it's almost absurd. It's too easy. I think that's part of maybe why I'm so sometimes drawn to it if I'm bored. It's like a low-hanging fruit, but it also is a worldview that's connected to a large policy at a global level that is beyond the ordinary vegan's ability to even see it. That it really is the ultimate proxy warrior army for resource-based economy, for sign a permission slip for gas consumption, total control over food, and that's it. And also, this is another thing, I led a recent vegan down this path, and if they're, even though we can debunk their basis of necessity, like, oh, it's unnecessary, the next step, if they were to get their worldview, like, let's say, settled in a city, and it was strong, the next logical step is to declare animal versus animal as unnecessary, if tech, because their argument is, well, no, we have tech that we don't need to do this. Well, the next logical step is, well, now we have tech that presents a fake impala to a lion that's made out of printed proteins. And so now that we can do that, it's really unnecessary that those two have that little.
Dude, I'm so glad that I love it. You clearly see it. I mean, obviously you see it the way I see it, and I'm very glad, because I've been saying this for so long. The vegans are the good global citizen model whacktivists, right? Mm-hmm. Like they're these slacktivists for the World Economic Forum, global takeover of the food supply. They are exactly what you would want if somebody, like the Rockefeller Foundation, or the Klaus Schwabs of the world. These people are the epitome of the useful idiots, right. And their worldview, if you take it to its logical conclusion, results in transhumanism, the need to modify the human body, the need to modify our environment, and the need to modify and mechanize everything. And their assumption that suffering is bad and we need to end suffering for humans and the animals, right? Their obsession with ending suffering, which kind of ties in with like a lot of Eastern religions, right? Like Hinduism and Buddhism. And this is why the West is so primed for this. The West, when it rejected Christianity, fell into papism, and then the Protestant Reformation kind of decentralized the papacy, and every Protestant becomes his own pope, and then that resulted in the nihilist revolutionaries kind of came out of the Protestant Reform. After the Protestant Reform movement, the Enlightenment comes about, right? And a lot of the revolutionaries they venerated, like Martin Luther. Karl Marx thought that Martin Luther was this great revolutionary. A lot of them were like seminarians, like Marx was a Lutheran seminarian. So they were reacting against the weakened, destroyed, kind of watered down version of Christianity that the West fell into, which, from the Orthodox position, the Orthodox didn't have a Reformation, right? The Orthodox in the East, the most of the church, which is, the Eastern Patriarchates, did not fall into all of these traps that the West did. Not saying that like there weren't, you had the Turkish yoke and you had a lot of other terrible things that happened, but you have these revolutionaries. They're coming out of this Western nihilistic worldview, and everything must be revolutionized. Everything must be changed. The revolution is constant and it's persistent, and it results in ultimately transhumanism. And the vegans are at this focal point where they're aiding the destruction of rural peoples, right, through the destruction of animal husbandry, the destruction of Christianity, of course, which has always been tied in with agrarian culture as well. And they ultimately, their worldview ends up embracing transhumanism and the complete revolutionizing of all of nature. And there's this guy called David Pierce.
For believing a creator exists of all things, and they want these little poopy pants float tanks that that give you your food and stuff. It's insanity, and part of it's like, yeah, we'll probably see some crappier version. That meme with the horse? It's like the idea of socialism, and then the reality. It's like this really funny meme. It's like a well-drawn head of a horse, the concept of what you think should be, and then what it actually is, it turns into just like this terrible drawing, like a kid did by when you get to the end of the tail and the butt. And that's how a lot of these things are. The Klaus Schwabs, we can see it for the threat that it is. We can see it systematically, like, wow, that is actually, I could imagine with my creative brain how that would actually play out, and how there are enough useful idiots for it to actually work. But the problem is it'll always fail because it's materialism. It'll always not account for the God-given thing that we have as humans, to want to know our creator, to want to know love. And these things are all transcendentals. They're not actually embedded in their systems at all. They're removed, like the Michael Calhoun, John Calhoun mouse experiment. It's the same concept. Put them all. It's utopianism. If you just give them their resources and their sustenance. But that's the thing. We're humans. We don't just, in fact, we'll get a lot of spiritual richness from not getting what we need materially. So they don't account for that. They don't account for the spirit. They don't account for long suffering as a virtue. They don't account for prayer. They don't account for there are people who aren't actually afraid of dying.
I know, right? And isn't that crazy? And in the history of Christianity, that's what converted so many people. The pagans were like, whoa, these dudes, they're just letting him, he's just standing there, they're burning him, and he's smiling. He's just praying. There's this I forget which saint it was, but it was like the first or second century. And he's kind of the patron saint in the Orthodox Church. He's one of the patron saints of comedians. And they were roasting this guy. Like, literally, they put him on a spit and were burning him. He said, "This side's done. Turn me over."
Right.
And the pagans didn't have this concept of there being something beyond just getting stuff, right? Having stuff and sensory pleasure. And the modern nihilist, the worst thing that can happen to them is death. But the Christian worldview, it's like Christ conquered death.
Yeah.
It trampled down death by death is, in the Apostle liturgy, Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and on those in the tomb bestowing life.
Right.
And Christ transcends all of this. And there's no concept of this in materialism. It's just you have stuff, you get stuff. If you die, you can't have stuff anymore. So you don't want to die, because then you won't be able to have stuff and be stuff. Yeah, and that's ultimately empty. Like, totally. It's a dead world.
And the trick that I think, it may, correct me if I'm wrong, when those Enlightenment thinkers came along and they started going with the natural law, like trying to just take for granted ad hoc all of these transcendental things, logic, truth, love, compassion, morality. And they're just like, no, we'll just try to isolate it to the here and now, and it's self-evident. All of this stuff is self-evident. And then you get these iterations, which I think actually the Constitution is some weird inversion of Christian morality. It attempts to make it, I call it feather pen law. There's like God's word, God's law, and then man got in their little costumes and their little feathers, and they were like, let's transpose it into men's language, human language, make it a human thing. And then of course you got the Rand, who comes, people like that who get propped up. Ayn Rand, who I love to bust her balls, because she's just like the ultimate materialist that just borrows transcendental categories and terms, like the ultimate pursuit is your own personal desires and needs, and the ultimate moral status that a man can acquire is their own personal pursuits. And you're like, I can see where that actually worked, but you look at it back in hindsight, you're like, how did you listen to that lady? Like, what? What are you talking about? And there's still a lot of people who follow me, they're still like, what do you mean? You don't believe in natural law? You don't believe in, and I'm like, there's nothing that grounds any of the things you find important or morally true in any of that. They're just,
the libertarianism, it's interesting, man. I'm glad you brought this up, because I've kind of seen you, especially the last year, like I've seen you kind of engaging with the libertarian ideas and ideals and kind of poking at it. And this is a sacred cow to a lot of people and I mean, especially probably your audience, who you've built this audience of you're really good at distilling imagery and words and comedy to kind of point at these truths that most people are not really thinking about. And so you get a lot of these libertarian types that are going to latch on to your stuff and really enjoy it. And it's been interesting seeing you engage with these ideas over the last year or so, and relatively savagely sometimes. And yeah, so did you, when you were talking earlier about how you went to LA, you're just like, you're into art, didn't really know what you wanted to say. Did you start out and have kind of more libertarian phase? I feel like a lot of us go through.
No, that was my raft. Libertarian is ultimately the raft away from the sinking democratic liberalism ship, which most people use it for. So if they go too far, you go, well, I'm just a libertarian. Then you can't call me a Trump-loving Republican, but you can't call me a lefty either. I'm just nicely, the whole classical liberal floaty. It's like a floaty, where you're just like, I don't need to take a real stance on anything except for don't bother me and leave me alone. You're like, you really think you can build and sustain a foundational society with do whatever you want, just don't bother me. But I did admittedly use that as a raft away from the inherited, the go-to default in LA is, oh no, I'm a liberal, right? We vote for Obama. That's what we do here. But as soon as you start questioning it, you don't really jump to the other side immediately. You get on that little raft and you go, well,
I'm the real liberal, classical liberal.
Yeah, you're like, well, conservatives, they have gay people, and then you start doing that thing. You're like, Dave Rubin's gay, You start
the liberals are the real racists.
Yeah,
am I right?
Totally. So I did that whole thing, and then and my family is kind of, at least some of them are stuck sort of in that classical liberal, like everything's cool, man. Don't be so far right or left, be moderate. But it's just not a strong stance because it doesn't account for theology. It doesn't account for God, doesn't count for moral law, doesn't count for what's happening with your spirit daily, and the fact that you can actually commit completely immoral acts against yourself and others, and have them be totally in line with modern liberty. Like, you know what I mean? So
Have you read there's this book, I don't know if I told you or if I recommended it to you before. There's a book by Father Seraphim Rose. I thought I had it right here.
Nihilism?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Nice.
That was
Yeah,
one of my biggest turning points. Like, I met Jay, I talked to him, watched pretty much all of his stuff, and the things that weren't too technical and out there in the philosophy realm. Something I could actually grab was a lot of the ridicule of these kind of systems, and the fact that, as he would say, there's not many worldviews. There are a bunch of things and ways people see the world or whatever, and a bunch of things that seem like particulars. But if you reduce it down to their core assumptions, there's not many views of the entire existence. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it's impossible for a brain like mine to know that as a tool to look at things, analyze something based on core assumptions, starting assumptions. And now there's no escaping. It's almost like once I realized that through his work largely, and then I, read nihilism, and I got into, a little bit of Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis and stuff. I was like, wow, this is really easy to grasp, and it's a really powerful tool. And the tool it's just a system of questioning. Like, how do you ground truth? How do you account for that first assumption you just made about the world? Why liberty? Why is liberty good? Why, you know what I mean? And then you realize, well, going through the libertarian phase, once you start asking the harder questions and you don't take that ad hoc, it just is, man. Of course, everybody universally wants liberty. You're like, well, Burning Man is liberty. Woodstock is liberty. Liberty.
The Bolshevik Revolution. They were just living their best life, bro. The Bolsheviks were just doing them, raping and pillaging and murdering and destroying the church. And
that's liberty. And so,
liberty, equality, fraternity was the French Revolution calling card, and that was an illuminist movement that was funded by Freemasonry, Western banks, and it came out of the occultists of Germany mostly. A lot of this, the revolutionaries. And they're just living their best life, bro. Just out there living their best, being them. They're doing them. Do you, bro?
Do you, man. Yeah,
the Bolsheviks are gonna do them. You do you.
Yeah.
Just line up on the wall.
You're like, just don't take my stuff. You're like, talk to listen to someone like Michael Malice. You're like, just take my stuff. Do whatever you want, and it's fine. You're like, okay, so society just degenerates into just like hedonists, just whatever. You just lay it all. It's not hurting anyone else. You have to be against man acting against himself if you're going to be against man acting against man. And that's the distinction that the libertarians miss. They want the virtues and values of what Christianity offers, but they don't want to account for the moral implications of their own behavior. And I know that sounds fallacious because I'm attributing intent, but I'm talking to a former version of myself. And it's like that's really what it comes down to. Like, you can't tell me why freedom is morally good. You can't tell me why, you can't tell me how a libertarian sort of leaning anarchist world would produce automatically, just based on freedom alone, a well-meaning, trustful, morally good society. There's no evidence of that. In fact, it's closer to satanic, like do as thou wilt, do as, just because it's Crowleyan. It's do whatever you want, seek the pleasure, just don't harm someone. And you're like, no, I want to be able to speak out against man harming himself. And I want that man to hear me and go, God doesn't want you to do that. And you know what I mean? As opposed to, yeah, dude, just, be careful. At least we care about you, man. And just don't hurt me. It's like,
right, bro, just wear a condom to the orgy, bro. Get
And that's the thing that's missing in all of this, is that there's no sort of independent advocacy, and that's a lot of what kind of let, you know, even though it's inevitable what we're dealing with, there's a level of hands-offness in Western culture that we've adopted, that we just watch things kind of happen. Whereas not too long ago, a beatnik who is shirtless, especially a woman, in the street being rowdy, screaming, drunk, would be it would be like shunned. It would be like community guidelines. Like I'm actually not against community guidelines. It's just that they've been hijacked by a worldview that I don't agree with.
Yeah.
But the
Well, I mean,
community guidelines were there.
you mentioned like the Constitution earlier, and like the people who wrote the Constitution, this wasn't well, first of all, the American Revolution, it's a little bit different than the French Revolution, very different from the French Revolution, very different situation. I'm not saying like all of these people had malintent, but it's like a deistic document. The Constitution is the people who wrote it, most of them were deists, most of them are Masons, most of them represented the kind of big city elite, the urban elite, the urbanizing elite of the American colonies. And there was a big movement of the agrarian people, like the rural people, the anti-federalists, who saw the Constitution as this abomination. They were like, this is basically just a front for oligarchy, and this is going to be horrible. And these big city elite are going to control all of this nation and basically destroy the rural people. There, wasn't the American Revolution, the American Constitution, these ideas of liberty that we see that were kind of enshrined in the West, this idea of like the atomized individual and individual rights, and the individual is, opposing even the individual and the collective, as if these are two different things, right? And then Jordan Peterson, your alter ego's obsession with the individual versus the collective. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because that like dialectic, you don't have that in Orthodox theology, right? You have the individual. The individual has his own identity that's not wiped away when he becomes a member of the body of Christ, becoming a member of the church. That's not like diametrically opposed. And it's like Protestantism really was reacting against papism, and Protestantism ended up bringing a lot of the baggage of Western theology with it. And then creating this kind of like everybody becomes their own pope. And then it's like, well, why do we even need Christianity at all? Like, let's all just be libertarians and just do good stuff. And maybe there's a God and he just like made this universe, and it's like the clock, and he set the clock and it's just winding out now, and God's outside of this. So these guys like Jefferson, like he was like a deist. And their theology and the way that they saw the world really influenced the way that they structured the culture. But even they agreed that you can only have like this so-called democracy or representative republic, that would only really work in a homogenous culture where everybody has the same beliefs, where everybody has the same fundamental assumptions on what's right and wrong, right? They didn't see this like experiment working in a fractured multicultural society.
Absolutely. And now you get the talking faces of the constitutionalists, who, the Charlie Kirks and Ben Shapiro's, who simply go, the feather pen people knew what they were writing. I mean, as long as you can move here, you move here with that, whatever you have. If you have a lot of money, that's fine. If you have little money, if you have no kids, that's great. As long as you respect and acknowledge the Constitution. It's like they make that the God, the paper. They make the paper the God. And it's like the Constitution could actually be anything. They could craft a new one that's not based on that foundation. And so clearly that's not the thing, because you could have societies, and there are some even Muslim cultures, societies, I can't speak for the whole splintered fraction of all of them, but where it's not the paper that actually really impacts the behavior. It's immaterial. It's deeper. It's in there in doctrine. Even if I don't agree with the doctrine, it demonstrates that that you could have law be informed by theology or moral law.
It has to be. You have to. It has to be. You have no other way.
Right. You see the consequence if it's not. It's just arbitrary based on trends.
Or might makes right. It's just like, hey, we're the state. I mean, this is what you have the communists and the Bolsheviks. They were coming from this nihilistic, materialistic viewpoint.
Yeah.
And what I love about Father Seraphim Rose, and there's another Saint Justine Popovich, Saint Justin Popovich. Anybody who's listening right now, I highly suggest you read, and there are PDFs of his books. I suggest you get them printed out. He wrote a book called, there's a collection of some of his writings called The Orthodox Faith and Life in Christ by Saint Justin Popovich. He's a Serbian, a great Serbian theologian and saint. And he wrote another one called The Orthodox Church and Ecumenism. And basically, like Father Seraphim Rose says the same thing. Capitalism and communism are two sides of the same coin. These are both materialistic ideologies, and you were kind of poking at this earlier as well. They ultimately dehumanize man. And transhumanism, as you said earlier, transhumanism is about destroying humanity. And what Saint Justine Popovich, he said that there's some great quotes. I've got his book somewhere. I don't want to fish through it, but I've got some of these quotes bookmarked that are just so good. He says that European man has made himself into a robot, right? Because man without God, man without Christ is nothing. Man without Christ is an animal, right? So he said, they both say that Father Seraphim Rose and St. Justine Popovich both critique both capitalism and communism. And they're both stemming from Western liberalism and this idea of materialism and building a culture based on essentially nihilism. And that's what he says in his book, Nihilism. So Father Seraphim Rose's book, Nihilism, The Root of the Revolution of the Modern Age. It's a fantastic book that I recommend everyone read. And then also there are audio recordings for all the bigots in the chat and all the JimBobbers out there in the chat, all the JimBob homies out there. There's a recording of a book that Father Seraphim Rose wrote. It's actually transcripts of lectures that he gave of a course that he taught back in the 70s. And it's called Orthodox Survival Course. And there's this channel called Orthodox Reactionary. And he does a good reading of these books. And he kind of goes through history from the perspective of, he was an Orthodox Christian monk and a priest monk, became a priest. He used to study under Alan Watts. Alan Watts was kind of like he was like a more advanced Sam Harris of the 1960s. Right. And Father Seraphim Rose studied under him, and they ended up converting to Orthodox Christianity later in life. And his Orthodox Survival Course is a great look at history from the Orthodox perspective, from the Christian perspective, looking at the history of the revolution in a lot of the later episodes. And I suggest anybody wants a better grasp on this kind of lens of history that I'm referring to, I think that's a really good place to start. But yeah, communism, capitalism, both are liberal, and both are based on humanism. Man is the measure of all things. This idea that came out of the Renaissance. And that just messes up everything. Man becomes the measure of all things. You just get to invent whatever fantasy world you want and try to force
now you give them the helmet verse, and then it really becomes true for them. You put a virtual helmet on them, where the irony of all of that is that you give a man a helmet to be his own god, and he thinks he's his own god, but he's actually just pan out and everybody's their own god, but they're actually slaves because they're hooked up to this input system that someone actually owns and props up and feeds them their appetites through. It's just a funny joke. It's almost like God, the comedian side of him, was like, oh yeah, if you pursue you being your own god, you might actually believe it at some point, but the reality of it will be the complete opposite. And so that's coming down the tube. But it's interesting you said that the capitalism, the two birds, and the ultimately God without man, without Christ, is just a machine, and there's no other place to go but down into the material, down into the worldliness. Like that's the only place you can operate. And ultimately that's what utilitarianism is. And someone like who's the dude, the bomber guy, he had good critiques, but the irony is he didn't see the distinction God missing being the thing that would make the difference. Ted Kaczynski, he saw the consequences of the industrial revolution, turning man into a machine, a cog for the purpose of the machine itself, regulated, which assumed some arbitrary goal, some goal here in the now. What do we do here? How do we make this place better for the mostest people, kind of thing. But it's so sad that he didn't see that, it's actually not a material game. But he ended up playing the material game by fighting it materially and not spiritually. And that's such an important thing for all of us who can see levels of what that guy saw. But the answer is never to participate in the same game they're playing, which is materialism. You can't defeat materialism with materialism.
Yeah.
You have to go to spirit.
Someone in the chat, like, it seems like maybe I didn't explain clearly enough. When I'm critiquing capitalism, this doesn't mean like owning private property is bad. This doesn't mean buying and selling can't exist. Capitalism is based on usury. Both capitalism and communism are based on usury, right? Are based on predatory usury. I mean, this is something that is, has been contrary to Christianity, and that Christianity has been opposed to since the beginning. Capitalism is a new invention. Capitalism is a 16th century invention. When did Adam Smith write his thing? It was like, I don't know what year Adam Smith kind of wrote his tome, but capitalism is a new thing. It's not something that everybody's engaged in before. So the capitalism is not the only way that you can have private property or be able to sell and trade or have money or buy things. Like, this is that's not what I'm critiquing. We're critiquing capitalism, which is a system based on international usury, and it's a system controlled by banks, and it's a giant economic scam, just like communism.
Yeah, and the reason it leads to communism is because the largest company, as we're seeing now, the Amazons, the connected to the Whole Foods, you name them, they start to aggregate the market share and the dominant supply chain mechanism. And so when that happens, it's not about competing or bottom line or making more money. The next phase is total control of supply. And so you team up with the government. And if the government suddenly goes, we're doing this other system, and the people who we're counting on to deliver is this large company like an Amazon. And so you could see how capitalism at some point for these large companies, for the large players, the large usury players, they get to a point where they start funding communism. When you go, well, how is that? I thought they were the capitalists. You're like, no, they fund the version of communism that creates a class society where they're at the top because they're providing all the goods. They're the main go-to.
They consolidate all of the economy, and they centrally control and centrally plan the economy. Right. And then when that doesn't work, they tumble it, balkanize it, and extract all the resources. And that's what they did in Russia, right? I mean, they destroyed, before World War I, Tsar Nicholas II, who, he's a canonized saint in the Orthodox Church. His family was martyred by the godless Bolsheviks, killed by nihilist atheists. And Saint Tsar Nicholas II was building up and modernizing Russia, but apart from the Western materialistic worldview, right? He was trying to, ultimately he ended up being killed. The West was funding these revolutionaries. The Western bankers were funding the revolutionaries, and they were trying to get into Russia and destroy Russia for a couple hundred years, right? I mean, since the French Revolution, since around the time of the French Revolution, they had the propaganda that they were pumping into Russia. So there is, he modernized Russia, Tsar Nicholas II, to a great extent, and did actually a really fantastic job of building up their economic situation, apart from the kind of global homo usury model. And of course, the West hated him for this and was always trying to destroy Russia as a power. But yeah, you can have a culture that's not purely communistic, that's not materialistic, capitalistic, and you have a history of this 1,000 years of, you know, peaceful existence not being controlled by central banks. You can look at the first 1,000 years of Christendom and what happened in Byzantium, and before the schism, where things got really crazy in the West. You did have, you know, relatively peaceful time. It's not like everything was perfect. You're not looking for a worldly utopia. This is another thing. Both capitalism and communism, they both assume that you can create a worldly utopia by properly distributing matter, right? If you just get the matter in the right place and distribute, it's a chiliastic idea, which is like chiliasm was declared a heresy in the church in the first few centuries. I forget exactly when. It might have been at the Second Ecumenical Council or the First Ecumenical Council, because people thought that you're going to create a worldly kingdom. Christ is going to come back and reign for 1,000 years on earth. And this same idea, you see it in the Bolsheviks. We're going to create the perfect Soviet society. You see it in Hitler. We're going to create the 1,000-year Reich. This idea that you're going to create a worldly utopia always leads to the same thing: mass murder, genocide, death, and destruction.
Look, I disagree with your characterization of the Bolsheviks. They were just trying to make things better. I reject your stance about that.
You gotta do the snorting too.
Yeah.
Zizek.
It's very clear that capitalism is what is ruining the American society today.
Yeah. No, it's all
Pano,
the
correct.
same.
Yeah, it was the Second Ecumenical Council that that chiliasm was condemned. Thank you, Pano.
Yeah, it all leads to the same thing. It's just like you get two pragmatists arguing two different methods toward their end. That's basically what we're looking at. And you see some versions of, like, you know, modern Christianity takes where it's just like, if we just get, you know, like, it ends up not being a spiritual battle. It leans into a utilitarian take on Christianity. It's not about you know, learning scripture, sharing gospel, you know, being Christ-like, and these kinds of things. It's about securing the system, and then you're still taking, you know, the loans, and you're still addicted to things, and you're, you know, I see that too with, like, all, you know, that
prosperity gospel type stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Same.
Yeah. Well, even like the current Pope, like, he's just all about climate change, and, you know, the Francis is kind of, I mean, he's just a few steps away from saying, like, oh, let's have abortion and gay marriage and stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's definitely, they got something on him. I don't know who they is, because to me it seems like the Vatican is pretty up there. You know, I don't know how many other branches you can go, maybe horizontally or up. Like, the Vatican seems to have the largest amount of tentacles.
Yeah, I mean, the Vatican Bank is, I mean, it's sad, like, to see what's happened in the West. And, you know, so many people they believe that Christianity is just, you know, papism, or, you know, maybe like kooky evangelical emotionalist churches where it's basically like a rock concert where you don't,
skinny jeans,
slightly less drugs at the rock concert.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of sad now that gets straw man, and people think that Christianity is just all these fake churches. And I mean, historical Christianity wasn't that. It wasn't a worldly pursuit, but it was a pursuit that allowed people to structure their families, their communities around worship together and around prayer together. Right. And we all want that. We all want community and, like, communion. And I think, you know, there's so much fake community now, right? We have these, like, atomized individualistic people who really want community, and it ends up being, you know, they want us to only have community in the metaverse, I guess.
Right. Yeah, and that point, they're just like, that world's gonna get so, it's gonna be such a trick. It's not even gonna really work on people. You know, I was there. I was a futurist. I was a transhumanist years ago, 15 years ago. I was there with Philip Rosedale, interviewing him, propping up Second Life. This is going to be the next thing, man. Everybody's going to be in this thing, man. It's going to be it again, like I said before, it doesn't account for the energies of God, as you said, that we have access to. Those are not, they're not, there's no personhood in those worlds. You could try to fake it, but it's not identical. And one could argue, well, this isn't identical, and that's true. I'm not actually looking at Tristan in flesh, but I get your personhood, I get your energies, I get.
Yeah, you get my DMs where the ones that I sent you with like you're seeing all the flesh in the DMs.
Yeah, but the funny part about this now looking at it, this whole identity stuff, you can be whoever you want, you can do this and that. It's all perfectly the precondition for this metaverse mentality where you go in and they've already set it up where some of culture already accepted that you can be a man if you want to be a man. Well, why don't we just skip to elephant in the metaverse? But here's the funny thing, and this is again a little bit of a Faustian trick, is that once these people are in there and they're going, finally, I can be seen as the elephant I wanted to be. I'm a big gay bi elephant, right? I'm a black elephant too. I'm African-American elephant. The technology just months later, maybe a year later, will permit the user to see that what the person wants to be seen as the elephant. The user will be able to see that elephant as something else. And so that's the funny part, is that all these people are going to go in and be like, finally, I could be seen however I want. But the person seeing them gets to go, finally, I can see people however I want. So here's this girl going in as this male African-American gay elephant, and the other person she's talking to sees her as just a what do you call the things the dog pees on? The fire hydrant. It's just a fire hydrant, like over there. You don't even see it as a person. And that's why people aren't going to really stay in there. They're going to be addictive qualities. People are going to be in there for mostly pleasures, pornography, carnal desires of bloodlust, these kinds of acting out, but for anyone who is connected to spirit at all, to biblical truth, is going to want communion with people they can see their eyes, basically.
Yeah, right. It doesn't suffice, man. Like, I haven't played video games in a while. I don't think video games are all bad or anything. I'm like, if you like the game, I'm gonna judge you. But it's like I can't count how many hours I wasted in my childhood just friggin' playing video games and stuff. Like in college, just Call of Duty and Halo and
boom shakalaka.
Oh man, right? Yeah, NBA Jam, dog. NBA Jam. That was the late '90s. What was the wrestling video game? There was like a cool WWE.
There was on Nintendo there was pro wrestling with like Starman and the pink guy, and there was a lot there. It wasn't so
Sonic.
Immersive. Yeah, Sonic. Yeah, Sonic. Contra, up, down, left, right, BA, select, start. 30 lives.
Yeah. Well, Mortal Kombat, and it started getting more and more degenerate too. Like when Mortal Kombat came out.
Yeah, it was like it also became more real. Like a video game was like, oh, look at that pixelated version of a human, and then they started getting the human in its proper form and photographed. You're like, wow, Mortal Kombat. It's like literally like a movie. We thought it was like, it looks like a movie, and then you're just creating a counterfeit of humans and presenting it however you want, and then it gets all weird and messed up at that point. Because you start perverting it.
Like the old, I know I get this the ultimate metaverse kind of image is like there's a kid and he's in his 3D goggles, is whatever, he's got his VR goggles on and he's playing Call of Duty, but like it's kind of like Ender's Game. Like he's actually controlling, a robot that's just like going through rural areas and like slaying the unjabbed and stuff. It's like just gunning down like people who refuse to go vegan.
Yeah.
And he thinks it's a game, but it's like really, it's like a full on DARPA immersive experience. I mean, it all came full circle. I remember when they announced that they were using Xbox controllers for the drones.
Right.
This was like 2006 or 7 or 8. I don't know.
Right.
I just thought that was a trip. Like, what the heck, man? They're literally training us to be soldiers on these games.
They are. Yeah. They actually use the data from people who play Call of Duty to recruit for the army. So they find them, they get them embedded in that that pursuit and get them good at that stuff. And the thing is, it ends up not being much different in the future. Like the actual combat will look no different than the video game, like you just said. And, you know, you'll see a monster. I mean, there was like a Black Mirror episode about that. It was like the soldier had these lenses and they were in this area and there were some sort of like zombie-like monster things, right? But they didn't realize one of them started having a problem with their sensor and they didn't know they got the sensor. And so they started seeing glimpses of humans, like, and they were like, wait, are these really humans? You know, and then they figured out that it was just this interface projecting a different, you know, filtering something else that actually justifies them killing, you know, which is like metaphoric, you know, there's a metaphor of that's always been there with war or germ theory. Get rid of the bad people, get rid of them. But in this case, it's literal too. You know, it's like you actually see something. And the other part of that gamification of that world, if they start, you know, making a mainstream sort of crypto currency based on gaming, and you get enough people participating, like the crypto will only maintain value if these people go into this world, right, and accomplish these tasks, even if they're messed up. So there'll be like this incentive. It'll be incentivized to be like, go in the world, just like you know, Ready Player One. They present the fun, energetic, you know, little boys version of what a game is, right, to people. Like that's what Ready Player One is. No, it's not. Ready Player One's like solipsism combined with you're introduced to a world where you have to complete all these tasks, right? They make it a game and a race. It's just a race. No, we're talking about games being played about who you can hunt down, you know, and who, you know, really anything the fallen man could imagine is going to be in that hellscape as a game that pays people. You know what I mean? And that's the crazy part. And it makes me wonder if there's actually going to be a call for men to go in and actually preach in the metaverse, even though it sounds like, oh no, you know, Christianity, we got to stay like, you know, local within the church, within what's real. But I don't think I would be doing it, but I actually kind of question that myself. I was talking to David Patrick Harry about that. Like, you know, there might be people who are called to actually go into those places and to get, ironically, to get people out of them.
Yeah. Or it's just like people like deluded, like, man, I'm gonna go into the strip club. And I'm gonna go preach in the strip club, brother. I'm gonna go into the coke. I'm gonna go to the coke house and go to my coke dealer's house and I'll do a few lines, but just to,
totally.
You know.
Yeah. No, I'm just on a date with Maggie Simpson. I want her to know.
I can change her. I can change her. Yeah. I can fix her, bro. I can fix this, you know, pink-haired lesbo. Exactly. No, I'm kidding. No, you might be right, man. That might be it. Or maybe it'll be more like you could break into people's houses and unplug their freaking their WEF goggles from the wall and like smack them in the head. It's like, get out of there. Yep. Dude, it's the metaverse, the you know, transhumanism, veganism, right? It's interesting. All these subjects, and libertarianism, right? Communism, they all really do have the same root cause.
Right.
They all kind of come from this what St. Justin Popovich called humanism, right? Like he said, that the humanism is the issue where man is the measure of all things. And the Renaissance kind of brought that back to the West.
It's like carnal solutions sold for spiritual problems, for like, you know, you're selling appetite. And that's like that's the nature of Satan's kingdom, is that you appeal, you know, the appeal is for man to get what he wants here, because, you know, if you can convince man that this is all there is, that's the only precondition you really need to then manipulate him by his vices because he thinks that this is all there is, and so you just better soak it all in, man, and just live the best experience. Do the experience. It's about an experience. It's not about honoring God or being fearless, being willing to even die early. To these kinds of things, it's clearly very easy to manipulate man if he's a materialist. Like that starting assumption, that's all you really need. You could dominate his cosmology, you could dominate his behavior, you can make him put on anything, inject anything to his body, so long as he gets his delivery, his delivery. And I think people are, I don't know how fast they're waking up, but I've definitely seen transitions in people who are like, I've had people talk to me directly, who are like, dude, I was not even close to aligned with what you're saying like a year ago. And it's not like a tap on the shoulder. It just means if you speak the truth and you do it skillfully, that's another part. You can't just be a truth bomber. You could be really bad at it. And saying truth, you could
just like smashing glass houses all over the place.
Yeah,
just wrecking people. Like you're not helping anybody.
No.
Like you can't sit down at the dinner table without having to like 9/11 pill everyone or something.
Right,
it's
totally. Or make people feel like they're so dumb. I've learned that too, even though my own despair has taken over at least maybe a year ago, a little bit, where it was just like I was so, I actually caught myself and I made a distinction. I saw something. It was that I caught myself saying, I'm losing faith in humanity. And someone corrected me and they said, why? That's the wrong starting point. You wouldn't have faith in humanity. You don't have faith in man. You can only be upset if you had faith in man. Like you can only be let down and in despair if your faith is a counterfeit faith. And someone else said that fear, which is connected to that counterfeit faith, the fear is, I can't, we can't figure out society, and why is man so weak, and why can't he just be stronger, and we fight up against these people and all this stuff. And you realize that fear is like a perverted faith. It's still faith. Like it's such a great way of looking at it, categorizing fear, is that you fear the order is fear God. That's the ultimate faith. But you can pervert fear by transposing the object that you're fearing. And it could be anything. It could be tomorrow, what's going to happen, what about the jabby? These guys, they're all legitimate concerns, but the moment I guess what I'm getting to is like learning the distinction between a concern and a fear that ends up running your show.
Well, yeah. No, I think where you're getting at is kind of like these things can become an idol, right? Where it's like, your comfort can be an idol. I mean, you said in the very beginning how like, having comfort and safety and like happiness, all these things, those can be the biggest trap. Right? And Father Seraphim Rose said something like, our worldliness is our biggest weakness. Like that's what in the latter times where people are so worldly that we're so easy to fool into falling in line. And I like how you said that, how like, I'm losing faith in humanity. I see that comment all over the place of like people saying this in the comments of videos and the comments on memes and stuff of just like I've lost faith in humanity. Well, we're not supposed to have faith in humanity, but we're supposed to have love for humanity. So I think it's pointing at a gradual, there's like this growing loss, like a coldness in our hearts kind of. And that's really dangerous, right? Like if we see other people and we don't see somebody that's made in the image and likeness of God, we just see like, it's like the demons just want us to see the demons everywhere. Right. And project and work for them by forgetting that man is made good. Like everything was made good. Right. It's our actions that brought about the fall. Right. It was Adam and Eve's actions. It's not like we're guilty for their sins, but we live in the repercussions of their sins, and we're guilty for our own sins. And like I was typing a minute ago because I had to find this quote, and that what you're saying really, it reminded me of this one. And I'm just talking to myself. Like I need to remember these things. St. John of Kronstadt, who he actually predicted everything that was happening in the Bolshevik Revolution. He was saying, like, this is going to happen, and the Russian people are going to be castigated for their worldliness, and there's going to be a scourge. And if there's not mass repentance in Russia for all this worldliness and idolatry that he was seeing in his time, he actually was living around, I think he reposed in like 1908 or something like that. So he said, ever confuse the person formed in the image of God with the evil that is in him, because evil is but a chance misfortune, an illness, a devilish reverie. But the very essence of the person is the image of God. And this remains in him despite every disfigurement.
Gotcha. Yeah, so that's actually great, because that also brings up a point where people are like, well, so is God Asian, or is he black, or is he, like, and it's like, no, it's deeper. The image of God is deeper meaning. Yes, Christ as in human form means that, but at the same time, it's not about those particulars, those attributes, like you said. It's in essence, and that's why, to have faith in man is pretty much it does correlate to the coldness, actually, because if your faith was in man to begin with, the failure, which man will fail and we're fallen, it's inevitable, will result in coldness, because you're like, you let me down. You're supposed to be a man. You're supposed to be God, basically, is what we're saying. That's the perverted version of faith in man. But something you said about getting people's essence, and something I've learned to practice myself, when you walk past the sniveling sheep-like man that you almost despise, in your deepest sense of being a human, you're like, there's an opportunity there, and it's really simple. I've done it many times, where you could actually ask to see the face of someone with a mask on and change their entire day. It could change their entire year. But the fact that you can give someone the opportunity to be seen in their joyful state, or to ask to see their smile, it's like, I take that approach now, whereas before I was like, I went dark. I was like, whoa, I'm starting to actually think like a eugenicist. Like, there are little bits of that leaking in. That's demonic. Like, that's the devil. That's me. That's spirit. That's the absence of the Holy Spirit, and me going, man is just here, and that's all we have. And I need to get rid of all the people in the way who are dumb and stupid, and we can find.
Yeah, because I could be more comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, I don't deserve this. I'm better than. It's like, then we just become like the elite.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a trap. And then I see it with myself. I see it with people I know. There's a correction there to make, and it's always, the correction is an act consistent with Christ-like behavior or pattern or virtue. It's never over-intellectualizing, which I am, admittedly. I am a version of the Jordan Peterson version that I despise. There's a part of me that is that, which is why I go after it so hard. But I know the weakness of that. You can't intellectualize as the medium for the gospel, for scripture, you can understand it. We can use reason and logic and philosophy to better kind of grasp or maybe even like convey. But I realized that a lot of this stuff is very simple. It's be joyful, sing, work with your hands, do stuff, use your gifts, try to isolate. A lot of people are in the process of finding their gift. What is it? What's their little passion that
Xbox, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The Xbox. And using that, God does work through your gift. And so it's actually not as complex as, say, the Peterson would make it, where, it's overthought. Like, well, it's like, you do have a gift, and it's like, he gave it to you probably. And I'd rather believe that than not. But the thing is, we have to use the gift. It's like, just get out of there. Just put it to use. The joy and the response to your fellow man is very simple. It really is a person to person thing, and it happens in these tiny bits of moments. It's not this big overhaul that we tend to be drawn toward. The new revolution, the the new enlightenment, and we'll finally get to the new golden age of a Christian society, this future thing.
Utopianism, right? Yeah, Kiliasm.
Exactly. Yeah, it's actually really a communal thing where it's person to person, and you can. For me, it's joy. You know, I'll get in a lot of conflicts with people, but ultimately in person, it's my joy. It's not like how witty and smart. Oh, I'm gonna come up with a joke, or it's joyfulness. You know, it's such a powerful thing.
Wow. Well, I mean, humor can be, it's like humor can cut both ways too. And I know, like in my younger years, middle school, elementary school, kind of phased out in high school, but I was like hyper comedic, like I was really into making people laugh and stuff, but it was a hiding that I was really doing. I found a way to modify people's behavior and say things to people that I wouldn't normally say to them, because if you say it in a humorous way, you could tell them things you wouldn't know. So it was like it was this kind of, I don't know, it was like to a certain extent, like I really embraced it, and almost, I mean, I wasn't like, I think I was like fully like possessed or something. It was kind of like there was like a demonic undertone to it, to the humor that I used to use, because it was like I'd use it as a mask, and like to like hide away from reality, really, and to express my real feelings, but from behind this mask. It was kind of a funny thing. So I'm really I use it less. You know, I try to use it more wisely. Because sometimes it's just vicious too, where it's like, you know, you're just like trying to pwn someone, trying to dunk on someone, and just like, well, you know, there's a way to critique and do satire and stuff without it being vicious, but it can be kind of hard, because I mean, I don't know, it seems like a lot of people, they thrive on the, you know, attacks, and they want that.
Yeah, they're watching The Gladiator in digital form.
yeah. Like
they're like, do the thing, you know, do the thumb thing. I deal with that too. It's like I grew up. I have 3 older brothers. I had to protect myself in all creative ways. One of those ways is humor, but also like personal attacks. Getting really good at wit and sharp edged insults.
It's a battle,
but also like convincing them that I'm like too crazy. Like, you don't want to mess with the youngest brother. I'll do something I won't even tell you what I'll do. And they'll, you know, like that kind of like insanity, like project the insanity. But like you just said, I got into a phase of like, and I still will dip into it, where I'll become more like a bully. Like there's like a bullying aspect to it, where it's like, I'm just because I can cut that knife. And if you invite me and give me a reason to, I'll sink the knife. Like, I won't even like play. I'll just go for the jugular. And I would say I would agree. It's an abuse of the gift. It's an abuse of because my gift's discernment. It's actually not humor. Humor ends up being just the communication of what I'm seeing, that everybody's seeing. It's not. It's like we're all seeing the same thing, and that's what makes you know a good piece of humor, or a meme, or a joke from a comedian, or a song even. That's what makes it through the nonsense and the noise, is that there's something true there. And so but yeah, that's such a good point. When you see your gift, there's also you can abuse your gift. You can abuse it and use it for just shittiness, which I've done. Probably do it at least like on Tuesdays.
Right. Like every few hours, maybe. It's crazy. It's like once you start to see these inclinations in yourself, it can be, like it really roots deep, like our we're not, God didn't create us sinful, but like I could see the times in my life where I really made decisions that really led me, or like a really small compromise or a small justification of doing something that I knew in my conscience was not right, how that really would like snowball into, just lost periods of your life, even where it's like, you're just, justifying and engaging in more of this nonsense. Someone we actually some of the bigots are enjoying the stream so much that they're dropping some super chats over here. This is a rare occasion of getting the bigots to drop the Streamlabs super chats. You guys, thank you very much for the support. We have maintained YouTube friendly content. This is very rare, especially when you have like a guest as cutting and explosive and
as banned.
as banned as JimBob.
Getting banned from Instagram is not even like, people are like, that's a badge. I'm like, at first I thought that. I'm like, now it's not. It's not
Yeah, I'm like really shadow banned over there right now. I'm waiting for them to just cut it, and it's like, I don't know. I'll just look back probably just like, man, there are a few posts where it's like, maybe I just shouldn't have posted that, and I could still have the account.
I actually have to admit, a confession is that I think most of the time I've been deleted is from comments. I just call people retards. Like I don't hold my tongue, and I say just shit that I know if the robot sees it, it's over. And I don't know.
Yeah. That's how I lost my Twitter, man. I got in this engagement with this vegan SJW, and she's telling me how like she identifies cows as people, and I told her, well, that's cool because I identify you as a cow.
Oh,
and
damn.
It was the moment where it was like, oh, this is really funny, and it's like okay, you just dunked on some dummy, who cares? And now your account's gone because you couldn't bite your tongue.
That's interesting because the last 3 accounts or two accounts were resulted from me calling someone an animal. I called someone a snake, which is really weird. You'd think if my account director, whether it's an AI or some, some vegan, like they'd be like, oh, okay, JimBob's coming along. He's referring to people as animals and animals as people. And,
it's working.
But it was 2 times where I used an animal term in place of a human. And I was like, what? Like, that's not even I'm just telling someone that they're being a dishonest snake. And they're like, no, we reserve, anthropomorphic slurs.
Dang.
For when
I'm not saying that like, anybody out there right now is like Jesus, but I mean, in the scriptures, like Christ calls, he says you're a den of vipers. He calls people dogs at one point. I mean, we're not like we are Christ, but so yeah, Christ would fully be banned for flipping the money changers table and saying they're a den of vipers. But thinking back now, I got warned by Instagram, and when they warn you, you get like they tighten the shadow ban a little bit, and it was for calling somebody a rat. I called somebody a rat, so that was
you could drop the N word. You could drop all sorts of things, not animals.
No. All right. Well, look at this. I got a Streamlabs donation from my own brother. I actually refused. I don't even talk to him. I make him like, it's good to hear from you, dude. Now I'll finally read what you sent me. Chase Haggard donated $5, says, great stream. JimBob, do you have any advice for a musician aiming to get into the meme war? Also, can you please teach Tristan about what humor is?
Oh, damn.
He's trying to be funny. Yeah, this is his thing. He stole my genetics a long time ago, stole my parents, and now he's stealing the limelight. Shout out to Chase. So that I'll talk to you next time you Streamlabs me.
He has to pay you to talk. He has to pay to talk to his brother.
Yep.
It's like a.
That's the only. I don't even read his emails or anything. I just only his Streamlabs.
No, I don't have any vice. I mean, I use music sparingly, in the same way I use a meme, kind of. And I think the only advice I could say is say something that's true. Other than that, it's your own expression, and it's like, me making music is gonna fall into sort of like gimmicky and novel because I'll always be talking about the stuff that I would be talking about in a meme. So it's always going to be topical about jabby jabs and things like that. So I can't give you advice based on what I'm doing with music, but the only thing I can say is find something that you see is true and say it through the music and make it short and don't do really long solos. Nice.
Yeah, he's actually, Chase is a super talented musician. He made a good edit. What's that song called, Chase? Drop your link for your song that you put on YouTube in the chat. If you streamlines me another $5, rather, I'll let you drop it in the chat.
Nice.
Chase. There you go. Dell1000 donated $10. Says people with a materialistic worldview love to talk about rights. Why do they speak of rights as a self-evident truth? In another breath, they say everything is a social construct. Also, God bless you both. What do you think about that one?
I love that. I've done a comic about that. I think it was a dude saying, what was it? It was something like, why do you believe in something that there's no evidence for? And he's wearing like basically a natural, like a human rights shirt or something like that. And it's like, yeah, it's all presupposed. It's all just an assumption that rights exist. I don't know what's your take on rights. I could see how the word itself can be compatible with Christian worldview in a sense, but what I've gotten to so far is that rights we have will and our freedom to act either aligned with God's will or against it. And I don't think it's not like I have a right to act against God. It's like, no, you were created with the ability the free will to do that. But I wouldn't call it a right. And I feel like a right is very, it's inextricably tied to a justice system. And it took me a while to let go of this because I was like, no, rights mean I have a right to like religious freedom and all this stuff. And I realized, well, that might not be actually true, even though I agree with the sentiment. Like I agree with the pragmatic.
Yeah, I don't want someone to I don't want a boot stamping on my face forever. But do I have an inalienable right to not have a boot stamping on my face forever?
Right. Yeah, and I guess it's a way of the word itself is a way of just describing defense of your God-given life, basically. But I don't know if it would be God-given property. You know what I mean? That's into a weird space there that I haven't really fully gone into because I also
it's something you have to unpack a lot, right? Where it's like, I don't think this idea of natural rights and natural law and all this stuff. I mean, there are fundamental laws, right? Like there are, but these come from God. These aren't something you can observe. Like natural law, you can't observe natural law in nature. Nature's fallen, and animals are raping, pillaging, murdering, and stealing. It's like there's natural law is just the law of the jungle, which is might makes right. Mm-hmm. If you look at it from like the fallen world,
right?
So without revelation, you can't understand things like natural law. You can't understand things like rights. You can't understand things like liberty, right? Like, okay, libertarians and the French revolutionaries, liberty, fraternity, equality, like those are empty slogans. That's just sloganeering. Like fraternity, what does that even mean? Right now, the Christian concept of being members of the body of Christ, right? We all have our individual nature. We're created in the image and likeness of God. We have our individuality, but we're also a part of this greater body of Christ. There's meaning to that there of like liberty. You have liberty in Christ, right? True freedom only comes from God. And there's this quote I pulled up earlier because you said something that made me think about this. Father Seraphim Rose says, Christ is the only exit from this world. All other exits, sexual rapture, political utopia, economic independence, are but blind alleys in which rot the corpses of the many who have tried them. It's like, so yeah, real liberty, real freedom, real salvation, that comes from God, right? But just blind liberty where it's like, yeah, liberty, bro. Like I can say I can modify my body to be a unicorn, or I can, what that just means nothing. That's just might makes right. Liberty is the only law is basically like the laws of physics,
right?
And that's kind of
it's rights are kind of in a sense they're like a false liberty, because if liberty only comes through spirit, through God, through Christ, then that means, and this has been demonstrated, is that people in shackles can be totally free. spiritually, like the only free that actually matters. But the rights, it kind of takes a transcendental element or item, if you will, and it tries to pull it down into something you could measure in reality, in the physical, and go, they took your rights, you're tied up, they took your freedom, and you're like, it's almost trying to sell you. And again, I'm not diminishing the experience of being like locked up or like,
Yeah. No, it's obviously not a good thing to just like dominate
prefer.
and control people like satanically and animalistically.
Right. But that can't actually be the measure of freedom, really.
Well, because I don't feel good, so therefore it's bad. Where it's like, well, bro, you're impinging on my freedom because you won't let me murder people.
Right. You won't let me keep my third girlfriend in a tube that lowers down.
You won't give me your wife, bro. I want your wife, dude. That's my right. It's my right to have your wife. It's my freedom, bro. You're impinging on my liberty.
There's something sketchy. I think that also is part of what you were talking about, the Masonic crafting of the document, taking the elements they know humans made in the image of God, we appeal to, we want to hear from, we want to have connection to, and they were like, shove it in the document. Make it a law. Make it a political or a system that processes immaterial absolutes in a physical justice system that is actually ruled just by men. And then what does it start out
like? The Declaration of Independence starts out, "We the people of the United States." I mean, it's this idea of the people.
Right.
The communists, the socialists, the Bolsheviks, they have the same thing, right? The People's Revolution, the Maoist Revolution. It's this weird concept. The people. I'd be an interesting thing to like look at like the historiography of this concept of the people. Like, where did this idea come from? Of just man. That it's like there's a lot of assumptions there. We the people, like everyone is just this member of this organism, right? We're all just cogs in this giant machine that is the people. And it's kind of like that's the deistic worldview, right? The universe is a machine, and the people in like the deists worldview, which Thomas Jefferson, a lot of the people who wrote the it's very likely that Thomas Paine actually wrote the Declaration of Independence in the Constitution, but he was British, so they didn't want him really involved in a lot of this stuff. He was also involved in a lot of cuckoldry and stuff. Thomas Paine, like he was in this
Ghost Rider.
Yeah, he was like in this open relationship too with these other revolutionaries. Like all these revolutionaries, they end up in the same stuff, right? The cuckoldry, open relationships, polyamory.
I am not going to allow you to say that about my favorite men in the whole world. These are fundamentally the people that changed the nation of the United States forever. I mean, this is equivalent to heresy for me.
The civic heresy, dude. I'd say you got the best Ben Shapiro too, man. You got the Jordan Peterson on fleek. You got that Ben Shapiro on fleek. It's yeah. Anyways, that was a great. I don't know. You and I can keep going on any topic, I'm sure. And I want to save. I want to bore JimBob and make him sick of me. I want to try to invite him back another time. Dell 1000 says an atheist escapes immaterial things. The same atheist will ridicule a Christian for accepting immaterial things. None of their arguments are cohesive. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I said escapes. He said accepts. So atheists accept immaterial things. Absolutely, right? Like freedom, rights, truth, morality. Juju King David donated 15 buckaroos. Thank you, Juju. Says awesome having JimBob on. His memes are always on point. God's providence is undeniable. When you see how much Jay Dyer's influenced y'all, if your starting point is the triune God and you have the essence energy distinction, the rest works itself out. Well, I mean, the truth is the truth, right? I think what's true is what's true. So thank you for that super chat, my dude, Juju. Let me check Rockfin. Joy Jackson.
I want to add to that. That the truth, if you have a love for the truth, you can't love just concepts. Therefore, the truth love can only be transferred, communicated through personhood. And so that's why if you have a love for the truth, if you attempt to make the truth an object or a thing or a matter or just a concept, then you're going to be loving the world. And so that's why the truth ultimately needs to be a being. Like it needs to be the embodiment. It has to be the representation of a living God. Otherwise, truth is just this, like, again, to, truth, God is out there somewhere. It's an abstract form, some sort of God. He cares about what I'm doing. I'm not going to do naughty things. It's the same concept you can apply. That unknowable God, the truth also, it's rare. It's like, it's actually easier to believe in this, because the materialists or the agnostics will worship the truth. And even though they're almost in the right direction, they're stopping at just truth. Oh, it's truth. It's the only thing we really have. But they have to go a step further, because the truth actually has to be a being for you to love the truth. And you won't get the truth unless you have a love for the truth.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And that is true. That is true. All right. Well, I love that. And the triune God, right? The Trinitarian God, the God of Christianity, becomes man, right? So God is not this immaterial thing that's just out there that you can't ever have access to. No, you have access to God through God's divine energies, which is something that's distinct in Orthodox theology that really ties things together well. But also, God became incarnate. God became man so that man might become like God, right? So that's what St. Athanasius said. God became man so that man might become God. God deified man. He became fully man, fully God and fully man in the incarnation, which is the most incredible thing that's ever happened in the history of creation. And God didn't become an angel. God didn't become an immaterial force like Ubik in Philip K. Dick's novel. No, God incarnated as fully man to bridge man's nature with the divine nature and reconcile all of creation. So it's like the incarnation and the Holy Trinity is something that it's so beautiful, profound, and fundamental to our reality. And it's yeah.
And he didn't get it. Yeah, he didn't just get a blue check mark. When you look at that, it's really important. Forgive me for not getting the name and the verse number, but essentially it's, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word became flesh. So it's an eternal.
Yeah, he wasn't made, right?
No,
like
it wasn't
Christ
like
wasn't created.
like it wasn't like, I gotta make man, throw it down to the earth and then the blue check.
Right. Well, like the Mormons, the Mormons believe that God the Father is a man who became the king of the universe, and then like it's very Masonic. They came from Masonry as well, but also the Jehovah's Witnesses, they believe that Christ is the highest of the angels, right? And that's Arius was what the heresies of Arianism was what brought about the First Ecumenical Council. And Arius claimed that Christ was not God. He was just the highest of all created beings. But I mean, clearly, in like you just quoted from the book of John, right? Like the beginning of the book of John, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, right? And I mean, that's right there that refutes Arianism, and that refutes as well, the Jehovah's Witnesses, Islam. That's a different God. Islam has a different God. Christ is not God in Islam. He's a prophet, right? He's a created being, but in Christianity, Christ is not a created being. Christ is fully God, and he's fully man. So yeah, just throwing that out there for.
Can you make a distinction? So the term ecumenism, in the sense where, like, Catholic Church, this. Correct me if I'm wrong, is like this all-inclusive sort of Unitarian-y kind of like everything is one. So the council is something created to combat that?
Yeah, no, all right. So ecumenical councils were councils that were held, right? So you had 7 ecumenical councils. Actually, there's some more, but the ecumenical councils were called in response to heresies that were going around. But ecumenism is a modern idea. It's like this modernist kind of pseudo-Masonic idea that all the churches are like fractions of the truth, and it's like they all have these little perennial bits of the truth, and the real church is like this invisible thing that like we can just create it by like smashing all the religions together. That's ecumenism.
Totally
and that's
different word.
Yeah.
Different word.
It's a different word, but it's kind of it's right. The ecumenist movement, they're trying to hijack the language of the ecumenical councils.
I got you.
The
Okay, I
ecumenical
was
nature of
confused
these
about
councils.
the two of those.
Yeah.
And from your worldview, there is that's what's so fishy about the squashing together of all these different places that have some sort of equal amounts of truth, and you make a big like sandwich out of them, and that's the truth, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that there isn't truth in other religions, but it's just you can be like, oh, they got that part right, but it's not fully tied together. But that doesn't mean if you smash them all together, it's the all the ice creams together is the right one. It just means because I can see how people skip to that. They go, well, if you look at all religions, clearly they're deciphering some bits of truth. Like clearly there's some truth in it. And then they go, well, just not all of it's true. And then it's actually an illogical follow, but their thinking is, well, if that's true, then if you put them in the Vitamix, then you can have the ultimate theological smoothie.
We're back to the vegans with the vitamins.
Yeah, totally.
I think that's a good way of explaining it. Yeah, the term ecumenical, the ecumenical councils, like these were all the churches who you have different you have bishops in all these different areas. So all the churches, which are all one church, right? We're talking about ecclesiology here, right? The nature of the body of Christ, like in the scriptures. Paul says, is Christ divided? Surely not, right? So St. Paul is referring to Christ's body is one. Christ's body can't be divided up. Like there's like this theory, this branch theory that, there's a bunch of different branches and like they all believe different things, but like they come together and they form generally the church. That's contrary to what the church has always believed that the body of Christ is. Now, it doesn't mean that the church believes that everybody that's not in the church is like bad and they have no truth, right? Like there's this concept, and David Patrick Harry at Church of Eternal Logos did a good stream on this about logos spermatikos, and that's like this Greek term for the concept of there being seeds of truth. Spermatikos, logos spermatikos. There's seeds of truth in all of the religions, right? I mean, why even like the human sacrifice religions, these are like an inverted demonic Eucharist that are, Satan is the ape of God, right? But all these different religions, they all actually do have to speak a little bit of truth in order for man to be embracing them, because we seek truth, we seek God. So, but that doesn't mean that like you believe in perennialism, where it's like the ultimate truth, Christ is in Hinduism and in, what's seen now as Judaism and in all these other syncretistic religions. That's contrary to the beliefs of the church, right? So the ecclesiology of the church is that there is one holy, apostolic, and Catholic, which means universal church. That's in the Nicene Creed, which was the first two ecumenical councils. The Nicene Creed had to be it was expounded, right? It wasn't like they created this theology at these councils. They had to state what the church believed in contrary, that was contrary to what like these heretical groups were preaching. Like Arius was like, Christ is a created being, right? Well, they're like, well, no, Christ is one with the Father. Like we believe in one Lord Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the only begotten of the Father before all ages, light of light, very God of very God, begotten, not made, of one essence with the Father, by whom all things were made, who for us men and for our salvation came down from heaven, was incarnate of the Holy Spirit and the Virgin Mary and became man. So it's like, that's the Nicene Creed right there. It wasn't like that was just invented. That's all in the scriptures, right? But it had to be like, we had the boundaries of the beliefs, which are the dogmas of the faith. And I might be explaining this wrong. Forgive me if I'm, explaining this wrong. I'm not like an authority or anything. Like I'm learning as I go as well. But this is, the kind of history of the Orthodox Church and the ecumenical councils and all this. But these councils, they were the different churches, which are all members of the one church, which is in unity together and has the same belief and has always had the same belief since the time of the apostles, since the church was created by Christ and given to the apostles. Ecumenism is not ecumenical in the sense that the ecumenical councils were. Ecumenism is a bastardization of this and a false idea and a projection of like syncretism and perennialism onto all of reality, trying to co-opt Christianity and get the Orthodox Church to unite with the Roman Catholic Church, to unite with the Muslim leaders and the Jewish leaders and Hindus, and it's like we'll all create this one world government and this one world religion, and we'll all have a happy, healthy utopia, and we'll all be vegan, we'll live in the pod, and
right.
So that's kind of like the NWO religion, essentially.
Right.
What's a really good book for understanding some of this, and it's also a very entertaining read, is Father Seraphim Rose's Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future. For anybody in the audience, that's a great book. He's a great critique on the evangelical churches, which is like, it's kind of easy to dunk on evangelicals, but he gives a really good critique of that, and also talks about the UFO deception. And he wrote this book. It was published in, I think it was finished writing in like 1975 or something. So it was way ahead of his time. He talked about a global deception coming with, UFOs and one world religion and all this. So yeah, it's Father Seraphim Rose, Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future.
And that's also in Scripture. I think it's Revelation. The strong delusions God sends also specifically in the sky, like actually in the sky, like
like the prince of the power of the air.
Right. Yeah, we'll see all sorts of interesting. I think clearly the technology's there, but I also think, I don't know if what you think about this, is that like I believe that there are aspects that are in the world that aren't of the world, that aren't just us, and I don't know if that's consistent, but like, for instance, some sort of like, like when people do DMT and they meet like the elf, and then the elf, you're like, whoa, I'm seeing some other form here. But that's like I would consider that biblically as a strong delusion that's believable in the experience, because you're like, no, it was real, dude. It was real, and you get that sense. I think that not only the new technology of like projection onto humid air, in the sky, being able to project very believable things. I have what if like there are actually also actual metaphysical supernatural delusions, like actual I don't know, but the fact that if both of those two are possible, then there's an added confusion too, because there's like a man-made delusions in the sky, in the heavens, and also the things people might see from the willingness to know something other than God, like the willingness to see a demon, the willingness to see an apparition of sorts, to get in contact with other worldliness that's still consistent with a Christian view, but I don't know. It just gets me thinking, like, the delusions are both going to be biblical, in a way God sent, and man-made at the same time. Like,
it's kind of like ritual, right? That's the idea of ritual, is like the pagan rituals were always about communion with the gods, right? Which the divine liturgy is actually that. It's, we all come together, we pray together, and we have communion with each other in community, with communion with all the saints in heaven, and worshiping God. This is why that's why I think Orthodoxy is so complete and beautiful. Is like you have the individual and the collective. They're not diametrically opposed. There's no fake dialectic there. You don't do dialectics, but the Orthodox worship is communion with God, with Christ, and then you have Holy Communion, which is the body and blood of Christ that flows through the church, and but then you have this, like, if you look at like Close Encounters for the Third Kind, when you watch, you've seen that movie, right? Yeah, so that movie, it's like kind of what you were just describing. Like the whole movie is about that. Like this dude and these people, they're all really hopeful for this encounter. they're all preparing themselves for this encounter with these extra worldly beings, these aliens, whatever they are. We would say demons.
Right.
And like Richard Dreyfuss, he like gives up his family. He cheats on his wife. He ends up kissing this other woman. He can't, all he's focused on is like building these giant fake structures that are like models. He's building like a scale model of this mountain that was Devil's Peak, right? And then the end of the movie, it's like the military is involved in this, the military, and there's these Lockheed Martin guys, and they're all communicating with this aircraft that had been terrorizing people like in like almost a ritualistic way for a long time, and then leading them with hypnotic suggestion to go to this mountain and implanting them with these ideas and visions to go to this mountain to experience this communion with this craft, right? And the end of the movie, it's like it's a liturgy. You have this craft comes down, and the craft is like the alien priesthood, the false Christ of the alien beings, and it's this light show, and there's music, and it's like doo, doo, and all the military people, they're all ready for it, and they know what's coming, and they're maybe somehow involved with this deception as well. It could all just be a big psyop, right? Like, right, you don't know. Right. They don't really explain it in the movie. At the end of it, the fallen angels, the demon aliens, whatever you want to call them, the aliens come off the craft after this singing, like the people are singing back and forth and using technology to communicate with it. And then the aliens send people back that they had already kidnapped. And then they have like this exchange program. And all these dudes that have patches of like angels on their arms, and they're all like brainwashed MK Ultra zonked out military guys. They go and they get on the alien aircraft, and then they fly off, and it's like, Steven Spielberg's great magnum opus work. Right. Like, but it's all about this giant deception that's ritual, that's religious, and it's kind of actually, when you look at it, it's like mimicking and mocking and imitating the divine liturgy, except it's aliens, and the communion is what just melding together with these cosmic otherworldly beings. Right. And that's that's sorry, I was like you got me all excited about that.
No, but the pattern you're referencing me just means it's just it probably always was there. I mean, look, we always look back at like people who are like, dude, there were definitely aliens here, and there's like, look at these scratchings and carvings. Of course, we don't even know if any of that is real or authenticated, but let's say it is. Like, it doesn't mean aliens in the way we're talking about. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there could be demonic shit that people have seen, and they just collectively they're like, yeah, it's another civilization. And you're like, that only from your worldview that, if you don't know how to categorize it, that would make sense if you're like, they're out there. But this is my biggest thing against just the way aliens are, sold.
Why are they gay? Why are they playing with people's butts?
Yeah, they're always probing. They're always doing something, and there's always a projection of a human need or want or concern onto the alien. So it's like they're never quite alien. They're just some version of us, and we're like, we just project what we think we would want as an alien. And then the other thing is, they would still have to abide by all of the laws of thought and little things like this to me actually not debunks, but like removes me from even the entertainment, aside from my Christian worldview, is that an alien who's flying here, in the Joe Rogan fantasy, and he's flying here, there has to be an awkward moment in the alien craft where, he's like, something goes wrong logistically in the craft, and they're like, damn, like, do they say damn? Sure. Like, do they have these little things that don't work, and they have a human-like expression for when like shit doesn't work? Like,
yeah, like when they get here, what is their answer going to be? It's like when they come here and Joe Rogan is like, have you done DMT?
Have you done DMT? Yeah, exactly. But that just doesn't like, it doesn't make sense to see like there's an alien form, and there's on a spacecraft, and they also needed to be trained, like flying, and they went through a
Yeah.
training, like endless regress. It's like, okay, so there's an alien training program where an alien was like, oh, I think I'm going to go into the, the service. These things all have to sort of exist.
Yeah, I really want to go anal probe some dudes
Like,
and hang out, and there's always military people present
Right.
at these things too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There's always military people at the abduction, so like the aliens have to come and hang out with like some Air Force guys and go do exactly what humans do to each other to ritually traumatize each other in occult rituals. It's like, why do the aliens act just like demonic satanic cults? Why do they all do that?
Sure, the invention of aliens was exactly that. There was a bunch of dudes were together for too long in the military, and they did some stuff, and they were like, we need a cover for this. Like, to deal with it mentally, we have to invent an alien did all of this and does this stuff, because we surely didn't do this to each other.
We would never do this. We would never psyop you guys. We would never lie to you.
Right.
It was those bad aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then
it's the ultimate scapegoat. I mean, so is an asteroid. I think they're gonna hold off on the alien thing and wait for another 10 year, 20 years maybe, because the asteroid thing is more doable, because you can actually convince people now. You just have it go through NASA, the guidance system, and then they're like, dude, there's a thing coming, and all you really need to do is fake some sort of light show, and then drop an actual destructive
blow
bomb,
some up, blow some,
and then
light
control show. the central nervous system of communication, as it's proven through the Karunka that it's possible to just drop a narrative down through this massive bronchial system of communication, and generally there's a critical mass that accepts it, and the people who don't are like, how are you believing this? Like, we're always like, how are you
no, they're the
this?
regressives. You're the religious nuts. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're the one, you're stopping progress. Like, we need, there's more asteroids out there. We need a global, you all got to move into smart cities and stop eating meat.
Yeah,
because we don't have enough resources.
And they're priming it with another Leonardo DiCaprio movie. Whatever it's called.
Don't Look Up.
Yeah,
I saw that
so
trailer.
They're gonna be like, this is doable, and they're kind of mocking that people wouldn't care, and
climate change, bro.
Yeah. I mean, I think that guy's been an asset for a long time.
He comes down to Ecuador. He buys I think he's a stooge. He probably doesn't know it. I think he's got handlers probably. Anybody who's like narcissistic is really easy to lead down the line, right? With money and attention or blackmail.
Or if there's something that is so horrifying, humiliating that occurred maybe when he was 8, maybe involving a guy named Brian Breck.
That's impossible, though. No, Hollywood would
never.
They would tell you. Yeah,
they would tell you.
Do you know how many people would have to be in on that?
Right, a lot of people. Right,
more than one.
I gotta wrap this up.
Maybe. Me too, man. Yeah, let's get JimBob out of here. Thank you guys for dropping them super chats.
I got some more of these if you guys want. Those of you who don't know who I am, this is a good way to know what I'm about and who I am. Savage Means Volume 3, madebyjimbob.com.
Now, madebyjimbob.com. Let me make sure I'll get the link in the chat over here. Madebyjimbob.com. I got to put the HTTP in there. So one of my loyal mods, please drop the link for madebyjimbob.com. What about like signed prints? You do stuff like that?
Yeah, I think there's only the one you just referenced. You know how many people would have to be in on it? That one, I think there's just 5 left. I'm starting to do prints because people are they were like, dude, please do a print. I'm not going to do a giant painting or whatever. And so I finally listened. Yeah, there's 5 left. This is the one. It's a bunch of people and they're all wearing masks, and the guy in the middle says, "Do you know how many people would have to be in on it?" Which we're all so tired of hearing, because clearly people can be in on a lot of things and not even know that they're in on it. And so the answer is yes, a lot of people can be in on it.
Well, and also, like, really, for some things, only one person really needs to know at a certain level.
Right.
Like, it could be one person that starts the train of deception.
Right.
Yeah, I love that meme, man. Love your work. Made by JimBob, madebyjimbob.com. He's currently, for this today, he's mad by JimBob on Instagram. Are you allowed on any other platforms? You got a YouTube channel.
Yeah, I've got YouTube. I actually have a channel on Rockfin. But as far as just posting, I went over to Gab. I'm pretty popular over there. They're very accepting to provocative, not provocative in the gross sense, but just like
bigoted,
jarring. Yeah, bigoted. They're good on bigotry over there, so I appreciate them. But other than that, no, I don't. I'm like, I'm not chasing platforms anymore. I used to be like, oh, I gotta, accumulate the following and do all this stuff, and now I'm just like, that's actually not the priority. Is finding the good people who are smart and can interact with my stuff in a way that it adds value and humor to them. And I realized that it's not a numbers game. It's not like, that's why I wasn't upset with the getting deleted at 115,000, because at 100 or even less, I already kind of figured that out. Is like, oh, if you get too many people, it doesn't mean they're good. It doesn't mean they're good people. It doesn't mean like they're not like morally, like could be morally, but like, it doesn't mean they're quality, like quality and add fun and laughter.
Yeah, man. Oh, we were talking about this before we even started. It really does. And it's so easy to get caught up in the quantity game, but the shadow banning on these platforms, even without being banned, just like the shadow banning is so crazy. And there are certain parts of the internet, there's certain community, I don't even know what you want to call it. There's a lot of toxicity, and really it's better to have quality viewers than quantity viewers, because to get quantity, you really do have to kind of compromise sometimes, and you see it out there. So I appreciate everything you do, Captain JimBob. I like, the quality of work that you've done over the years. You're somebody that I always try to tune into as often as I can. And yeah, dude, I'm gonna definitely bug you to come on again, because I can talk to you forever, man. I'm totally appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a group thing with Jay and maybe even David Patrick. We could, I don't know, just like summarize whatever's going on.
I'd love to do that, man.
We could watch a recent movie, an inversion movie, and critique it or something.
There we go. And you know what if we do someday, we can watch some vegan debates. Like, you can come on, because I know you've had your foot in the vegan pond with debating some of these people. We can do a stream and talk about some of their arguments, and maybe take calls, right?
Oh, that'd be cool.
Do a call-in show.
Yep.
And like, see if some of these vegans want to call in. It'll probably be mostly friendlies. Whenever I do these, it's almost always friendlies and a few trolls. And we can do that on Rockfin, so we don't have to be too I don't know. We'll figure it out. We did all YouTube today, though. We stayed YouTube friendly. So all you YouTube bigots, make sure to appreciate by sharing the videos, because YouTube will not do that. Share the videos with your friends and family. Record them on a high 8 camera and stuff the tapes in your neighbor's mailbox, with conspicuously wrapped envelopes. Tape up the envelope and stick it in their mailbox, right? Get an overhead projector. Project this stream onto the side of your neighbor's house and blast the sound on your speakers, right? Make a flip book. Make multiple flip books by hand, where you do a cartoon of JimBob and me, and then you have an audio recording that person also plays, and put those out there. So that's how we got to get these out. We're old school. We can't get these out through the algorithm. We rely on you. Make stone tablets with transcripts.
Or take really good, important bites that are either insightful or funny, and to make a full music video. Just do that for us, and that's the best way. Yeah, that's the best
Right
way
now.
to share it. So
Yeah, we need you. I would love if more people would clip it, because sometimes there's great clips. I mean, I'm not gonna go through. I don't have time to go through and watch it and clip it. Anyone's welcome to clip it. Tag me, and I'll download it, and I'll load it up.
also, we'll be expecting some new woke, truthful music from your brother Chase. So
That's right.
Now he's
That's right.
on the
I
spot.
think he. Well, I can't. He's gonna have to communicate with me via donations if he wants to. But yeah, shout out to Chase Haggard over there on YouTube. You guys make sure to check out his video. Find JimBob, made by JimBob on YouTube.
Oh, look.
Mad.
Just as we're talking,
What you get?
it's blown out.
Uh-oh.
You know that triangle with the Instagram. Oh, there it is.
Oh, your post went against.
Your content went against. You can lose access. Bullying. Let's just. Okay. Okay. See, I gotta stop.
It was a comment, huh?
I said, tell me. Okay, here's the comment, just so you guys know what to not say. Tell me, retard. What was the hypothesis for the scientific theory of evolution? And it's simple stuff. If I just leave out the
Yeah.
but then I won't comment. If I can't do that one little, I'm gonna try to.
This is the battle, man. This is the internet. This is how it gets us. I have gotten a lot of those from Instagram, and then I finally got one where they told me your channel's abilities or your page's abilities will be limited, and I've never gotten that. Like, they told me you're going to be shadow banned, and then I went from getting like 1,000, 1,200, whatever likes on any post you put up, maybe average 1,200 likes. Then it went to 150 maximum. It's just like, oh, okay. You just dialed me down 90%.
It's all my comments. I'm learning. I don't need to say that. I want to say that.
Mm-hmm.
But if I don't call someone a retard, it's not like I'm like cucking to.
Well, how are you going to convince them of your position if you don't insult them?
They can't.
How are they gonna understand that we're better than them?
They won't. They can't.
They can't. So all right. Made by JimBob. Thank you, dude. We're gonna cut the stream for all you bigots out there watching on YouTube, watching on Rockfin. Share the videos, like the videos, support the videos. Shout out to our sponsor, Choq.com, CHOQ.com. Increase your toxic masculinity, your toxic femininity, improve your fertility, whether you be a lady or a man. These are the top quality, organic, and wild-crafted adaptogens. Best stuff you can get, CHOQ.com, but you got to use that code BIG60. All the bigots out there, use that code BIG60, and you're going to get 60% off store-wide. It's going to run at least till hopefully past the end of the year, but crazy, insane discount over there at CHOQ.com. Big shout out to our sponsors over there. Hey, you guys who watch the show, you guys are sponsors also. So shout out to Choq.com. You will increase, if you use that code BIG60, 60% off in everything in the store, and 60% more climate change with every purchase. That's 60% less childhood for Greta Thunberg every purchase you make, and 60% more insults from JimBob to people he's arguing with on Instagram. 60% less, more shadow banning for both of us on Instagram if you use the code BIG60 over there. CHOQ.com, Choq.com. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you, JimBob, for hanging out. We are out of here.